I think we've all been there, When the moment's right, what do? You get the one chance to get it right. What do you do? Today we're going to be looking at a story in Mark chapter 14 of a lady who has one chance to show Jesus how much he means to her. And though everyone else in the room misses it, she doesn't miss her chance. Today, we are going to be looking at the story of a lady anointing Jesus with perfume. And the thing that we're going to be looking at is all the things that are going into this moment, right? This moment where the story of Mark is leading us into the final moments of Jesus' life. And here's where we're going to find ourselves in Mark chapter 14. It says this: "Now the Passover and the festival of the unleavened bread were only 2 days away." So that's the time we're in. That's when the moment is. That's the moment we have to interact with Jesus and what Jesus is going to do. And here's the deal: just 2 days away is one of the biggest holidays of the Jewish life. The Jewish religion is the Passover, and it's coming up 2 days away. And it says the chief priests and the teachers of the law were scheming to arrest Jesus secretly and kill him. But they did not want to do it during the festival because they were afraid the people might riot. And so this is what's happening. And Mark is taking this story into we've seen who Jesus is, and now he's taking us into the purpose of Jesus' life, and he's taking us into the final days of his life. And you can see that they're in Jerusalem now, and the festival is happening, and they're about to have the Passover, and the city of Jerusalem is doubled in size, and Rome has brought in more soldiers to act as reinforcements, and more politicians that usually have nothing to do with Jerusalem are living in Jerusalem for this week to make sure nothing happens. And without even looking at theological significance, you can see how this whole city every year at this time is a city on edge. It is a city ready to explode at the smallest thing. And so that's why Rome sends in more soldiers. That's why more politicians show up to make sure everything's okay. And that's without looking any deeper. And yet, if you look a little bit deeper to the theological significance, we know the last week we talked about as Jesus cleansed the temple and cursed the temple, what he's going to do is one day replace the temple. And now as he's heading into the Passover season, he's about to replace the Passover as well. And he and all his friends know that Jesus is getting himself into a world of trouble. And 2 days before this Passover, we find him at dinner with a man named Simon the leper. While he was in Bethany, reclining at a table in the home of Simon the leper. Now we're going to look at the place of this story. And here, this story is such a Bible way to tell a story, by the way. It is often in the Bible what you'll find is these people who are really significant in the world's eyes. We're going to find out there are kind of teachers of the law there. There are friends of Jesus that have big names in the Bible. The disciples are there. There's going to be other people in this house, and yet they're just going to be part of the backdrop. They're not going to get a name. But today, this man named Simon the leper is going to be the only person who's named in this entire story. And what's fascinating about this guy, Simon the leper, is that we know almost nothing about him. He doesn't even have a little footnote, like a cross-reference thing in my Bible that says this is another time where he did something with Jesus or anything. None of that. It's just a person, Simon the leper, and he's there, and that's whose house they're at. And what's fascinating about this is that they're at Simon the leper's house 2 days before the Passover. You don't think that's interesting? Okay. Well, let me tell you something about the Jewish religion, the Jewish faith. You can't just do that. Okay? There's rules to this thing. If you're considered unclean and you're sick, or you had your dad's funeral that week, or you had to do something, the time of the Passover, you're considered ceremoniously unclean. And so you had to miss the Passover. You couldn't go do your sacrifice. You couldn't go into the temple. You couldn't do these things. And so you'd have to go the next month, have some sort of makeup Passover by yourself. That's lame. No one wants to do that. And yet they're all sitting here in this house with a man, Simon the leper, 2 days before the Passover. And here's the first thing we're going to learn about how God interacts with people. One, it's this, that the insignificant of the world are deeply significant to Jesus. There's going to be a lot of people in there. There's a lot of people operating in this house. And there's a lot of people at dinner. And yet the one person that gets a name is the last person you would think would even be invited to the house, much less it's being hosted at his house. And the second thing that we're going to learn from Simon the leper is one of the keys of everything Jesus came to earth to do. He came to bring people back into the community of God. He came to bring people back into the community of God. And so here's the deal. Here's what N.T. Wright says. He says, in some Jewish circles, a maimed Jew could not be a full member of the community. In addition to the physical burden of being blind, lame, deaf, or dumb, such a Jew was blemished and unable to be a full Israelite. This means that Jesus' healing miracles must be seen clearly as bestowing a gift of shalom, wholeness, and to those who lacked it, bringing not only physical health but a renewed membership in the people of Yahweh. These healings, at their deepest level of understanding, would be seen as part of the total ministry, part of the open welcome to those who have been outside the community. We've been saying this the entire series of Mark. The miracles, when we show up to a miracle in the stories of Jesus, the miracle is actually the smallest part of the story. It's actually the least significant thing that Jesus is trying to do. The miracles are always important, but they show that Jesus is trying to do something else. So in Mark chapter 1, Jesus heals a leper, okay? And he heals a leper, and he says, now go show yourself to the priest and make a sacrifice. What's he saying? He's saying, I've made you clean. Now you can go back into the people of God. You can go act like a person who is part of the community of God again. You can go into the temple because I've made you clean. He heals a man who's born paralyzed. He says, I now forgive your sins. What's he saying? He's saying, I have done something deeper than just heal your sickness. I've done more than just give you a miracle. I've given you my grace. And then he leaves those two people who are in dire straits, who needed everything physical from Jesus. And then he does something that's not miraculous to you and me, but is as impossible, if not more impossible, than healing a paralyzed person. He then walks over to the desk of a tax collector named Matthew, who doesn't have any physical needs from Jesus, who doesn't have any sickness that needs to be healed, but he is deeply and utterly separated from the community of God. One of the ways that people referred to really, really bad people was the tax collectors and sinners. These are the people who betrayed Israel. These are the people that have made their wealth working with the Roman government. And the people of Israel are like, you made your bed, and now we're going to make it perfectly certain that you lay in it. We're not going to talk with you. We're not going to work with you. We're not going to interact with you. You are now the enemy. You're exiled. And Jesus walks up to this tax collector and he says, follow me. Come back into the community of God. Come back in. And what happens is that when Jesus walks into the room, he brings healing, and he brings grace, and he brings restoration of community. And this restoration of community is so thorough, it is so complete, that there's a room full of Jewish people all being willing to have dinner at a leper's house 2 days before the Passover. That he has been so healed by Jesus, he has been so cleansed of his leprosy, that even Jewish people are willing to be in his house, in community with him, without fear of it ruining their chance of going to Passover, because that's what Jesus does. He brings people in. He says, welcome to the table, welcome to the house, come on in, you are now part of it. And very often what happens, and when people start showing up at church, or they maybe leave, or they show back up at church, right? Or they have this time where there is an absence and they come back, and guess what? We're always nice about it. We're always glad to see you. We're always happy to see you in the doorway. We're always happy to see you visit. We're always happy to see you come and worship, because that's the whole point of Christianity, is bringing people in. And the entire community of Jesus was filled with people who had been separated, who had had hardship, who had had problems, and he has welcomed each of them in. And this tax collector that he said, you can follow me, he actually went on to write one of the books of the Bible, Matthew. That's how complete the forgiveness is that comes with Jesus. Do you remember the story of the prodigal son? He runs away, squanders everything he had, comes back to his dad, and he says, I don't deserve to be your son. Let me be one of your slaves. What does the father say? You're not coming back as a slave. You're coming back as a son. You're coming back as a son. Because the restoration to community is total. When we come to church on a Sunday morning, we have all made messes of our lives in our own way. We all have problems that we've caused in our own lives that we're now dealing with. And maybe I have some that are the same as yours, and maybe mine are different from yours, but we all have them. And yet Jesus looks at all of us and says, you are welcome in the body. It's back, everybody. You know it's a good sermon when that's back. And that's why our hymn, one of the hymns that Christians sing says this: were the whole realm of nature mine, that were an offering far too small. Love so amazing, so divine, demands my soul, my life, my all. So that's the time and place. It is right before Passover. Jesus is picking fights with the religious leaders. He's picking fights with everybody. And people in his life can just kind of tell he's going to get himself killed. And yet he's in this room that symbolizes the amount of grace he has for the world, the amount of grace he has for you and for me. And then shows up the main character, the main event of our story, the adoring woman. And it says this, they're in the house, and a woman came with an alabaster jar of very expensive perfume made of pure nard, and she broke the jar and she poured the perfume on his head. Some of those present were saying indignantly to one another, why this waste of perfume? It could have been sold for more than a year's wages, and the money could have been given to the poor. And they rebuked her harshly. And Jesus says, leave her alone. Why are you bothering her? She has done a beautiful thing for me. The poor you will always have with you, and you can help them anytime you want, but you will not always have me. She did what she could. She poured perfume on my body beforehand to prepare me for my burial. Truly I tell you, wherever the gospel is preached throughout the world, what she has done will also be told in memory of her. Now we know from other stories that this woman is Martha, Mary, the sister of Martha and Lazarus, one of the close friends of Jesus. Her brother was dead and Jesus raised him to life. She's one of the close friends. She's known as being one of the best listeners and best disciples of Jesus. She's laser focused on Jesus' teaching, and she can tell that he's going to get himself killed. He's not keeping a wide berth, and I can't stop him. And so she shows up, and she has this jar of perfume, and she says, I can't stop you. I can't force you to do something different, but I've always loved you. And you've always been so good to me. You've had so much kindness for me, and I want to give you what I can. And when we have these moments where we realize the amount of grace Jesus has offered us, and we realize that a love that amazing and that divine demands our soul, and it demands our life, and it demands our all. What it does is it creates, one, a generosity inside of us. And this generosity is the one that wasn't really there before. This desire to say, give back. This desire to say, I want you to have this. I want you to have my life. I want you to have my service. I want you to have my money. I want to give this to you because you are a good man, and I want to give this to you. And two, it creates a generosity that other people don't understand. She starts acting generously with Jesus, and everyone else goes, what is wrong with this woman? And what's going on with this woman is she understands the kind of man she's dealing with. The kind of love that you will not find anywhere else on this planet. And when you find that love, it requires so much from you. And here's what's fascinating. Jesus takes her gift and says, not only am I going to receive this gift because it's a kind thing, it's a beautiful thing you've done for me, I'm going to let it stand for something that you could never even thought to make it stand for. I'm going to make it be something that you could not have made it be. I'm going to let it be my anointing as the king. I'm going to let it be preparation for my burial because I have come to die for the world as its sacrificial king. And he says something else about what she does. He says, not only is it good, not only is it going to be his preparation for burial, not only that, but he says, she has done a beautiful thing. Another way you could say that word is, it was lovely. It was delightful. She has done a lovely thing for me. William Barclay says this, love does not only do good things, love does lovely things. In that moment where you're going, how can I give back to this person I love or I admire or I esteem or I care for? What can I do? And he says, well, what love does is lovely things. I know as an acquaintance, the guy, his name is Kerry Livgren, and he's a guitar player and songwriter for the band Kansas, and he wrote the song Dust in the Wind. And he told me that when he and his bandmates were young and poor and trying to make it out there in the realm of music, they could not, everything they could do, they would just barely scrape enough money together just to buy instruments to play on stage. Like they just, whatever crummy instruments they could get their hands on, that's what they played with. And they could hardly afford that. And then he said, once we made it, once we were big, once we had all the money in the world, once we could go anywhere we wanted to go, buy anything we wanted to buy, do anything we wanted to do, we were walking on stage and people were handing us guitars. People were just giving it to us. We were playing the most expensive guitars for free, just so other people could see me play their guitar. And what he's saying is what is happening here, that people were not giving it to him out of some sense of charity. They were giving it because of who he was. They were giving it to him because of, I want to say thank you to you for what you've given to me. And what the Bible calls this is giving honor where honor is due. They look at this woman, they say, you could have sold that and you could have given it to the poor and you could have helped people or you've given it to charity or whatever. And do you think Jesus is saying, oh, actually, I changed my mind. I don't like it when people give to the poor? Do you think that's what Jesus is saying here? Do you think Jesus is saying, well, actually giving to me is more valuable than giving to the poor? Maybe, maybe not. I don't know, not necessarily. I think what he's saying is when we give to charity and when we give to someone we esteem and admire, it's not actually the same thing. They're two different activities. And both are actually good. When you look at someone and say, because of who you are, I just want to give you a gift back because of your kind. You've been kind to me. You've been gracious to me. I want to give something back to you. I want to give honor that I think would be worthy of you. That's actually a good impulse in humanity. There's that impulse to just say, I want to give this back to you, is a good impulse. And I think he would say that if you and I, which many people in my generation are this way, if you or I don't want to say that, let's just say it. If you or I have no impulse to give honor to those who deserve honor, That's a problem with us, not them. That there is a respect and there is an honor that should be given to those in our lives who have done good things for us. I remember when I was younger, my dad had a friend who's a lawyer, and he got me out of a speeding ticket. And about a week and a half later, my dad came and he goes, "Hey, did you write him a letter yet? Did you send him a card? Did you say thank you?" And I, I'm going to do it. And he said, "Listen, I'm not going to keep asking my friends to help you if this is how you're going to treat them." That giving honor where honor is due is a good impulse. And when we give that back to Jesus, and we look at Jesus and say, "Jesus, your love demands of me everything I've got, and I want to give you whatever I can give you," He will receive it. And He'll find it beautiful and lovely. And He'll also make it something that we could never make ourselves. This is why you sometimes hear people say that the gift of salvation, the gift of grace that Jesus gives us, is the freest thing you'll ever receive. But it'll also cost you everything you got. Because our whole lives get shaped into the way of Jesus. And the question is, what happens if you interact with Jesus, you hear about Jesus, and you hear the message of His grace, and you don't want to respond by giving your soul, giving your life, giving your all? What happens if you don't want to do that? Well, this Bible tells us that too. The indignant men pipe up. The Pharisees, the teachers of the law, Judas, the disciple who betrays Jesus, these people start talking. "Oh, we could have done something else with it. Oh, that was dumb. You should never have done that. Oh, what a waste of time." And not only are they just mocking what you do, but actually in the Bible, what they do routinely, and even starting from the very beginning of the Gospels, is they try to get rid of Jesus. This guy's got to go. We got to get rid of this guy. All the way back in the beginning parts of chapter 3 of Mark, we see a moment where the Pharisees and the Herodians, who are like these guys who are really all about the Roman culture coming into Israel, and the Pharisees are like back to the Bible type people, they meet Jesus and they dislike Him so much that they team up with each other. These guys are natural enemies. They would normally hate each other, and now they're teaming up to try to figure out how to kill Jesus. Right? That's from the very beginning. His entire story goes this way. And this happens here, and what are they doing? We got to get rid of him. I don't want to live my life giving so much to Jesus. And Judas goes out, betrays Jesus. "Hey, tonight's the night. We're going to do. I can get you Jesus tonight. We've got to get rid of him." Judas Iscariot, one of the 12, went to the chief priests to betray Jesus, and they were delighted to hear, and they promised to give him money. And so he watched for an opportunity to hand him over. Does anybody know, by the way, what Jesus was betrayed for? How much money they gave him? 30 pieces of silver. So this woman gives Jesus a gift of a year's worth of pure perfume. Who knows what the room smelled like? And then he leaves and sells Jesus for the price of a common slave. If you don't want to give Jesus your life, your heart, your all, you reject Him. You get as far away from Him as you can. And do you know how the most common way modern Americans reject Jesus? With the wave of a hand. With a joke. With a snide assumption that you have to be pretty dumb to believe that. With I used to believe that. I used to be a Christian. I went to youth group a couple times, but I grew out of it. Do you know why we can reject Jesus that way? Because we have the luxury of distance. He's not actually right here in our face. He's not actually right here pointing out all the hypocrisies in my life. He's not actually right here pointing out, he's not physically here able to yell in the room, say, "This whole church is a waste of time." Like, I would kill Jesus too, maybe. You know what I mean? Like, he's not physically here doing that. We have this distance. We have this ability to kind of step back and read the Bible and go, "Oh, that was kind of interesting, but not really my cup of tea," or, whatever. But in the Bible, there were no ho-hum responses to Jesus. In the Bible, there were no people that kind of an interesting cat, but not my taste. No one did that in the Bible. They either gave him his all or they went to kill him. That's what they did. And what happens is, if you and I walk around thinking there's not a whole lot on the line, I can leave it or take it, I don't really care, what that means is that we actually haven't really encountered the living Jesus. That he hasn't actually put this crossroads in our life to say, listen, you are moving the wrong direction. I need you to change the way you're going. I need you to repent and come to me. I need you to follow me. And if we haven't done that, then we can sit here and pretend that maybe, I can like Jesus on some days, but maybe on some other days I don't have to follow him. But those who interacted with Jesus, those who actually met him, never thought, oh, ho-hum, whatever. Because here's the deal. If you become a Christian, if you say, all right, fine, I'm going to follow Jesus, there's never going to be a time in your life where it doesn't feel like he's intruding on you. Where it doesn't feel like he's demanding more of you than you wanted to give. Where it doesn't feel like he's demanding you to not act the way you would most likely want to act. And so when we become Christians, when we follow Jesus, the emotion, the thoughts that run through our minds, the self-centeredness and the lust and the stinginess and the low opinions of others and the prejudices and the moral superiority and the self-righteousness and the self-congratulation that just run rampant through our minds, Jesus Christ will lay claim to that. And the emotions that go through our bodies, and the mood swings, and the pickiness, and the feelings that want to run our lives, Jesus Christ will lay claim to that as well. And the families, and the workplaces, and the bank accounts, and the time spent with our families, and the time spent away from our families, and the weekends, and the weekdays, and the vacations, and the times of rest, Jesus will lay claim to that too. In every single area of our lives, he will be coming into our lives saying, you need to change that. That's not honoring to me. You need to get rid of that. You need to act this way. You need to change. And you will find that, man, yes, that love of Jesus really does demand all of it. You know that time, you know that moment where you're fighting with your wife or your husband, and it is just so unfair. You know what I'm talking about? Where you're like, there's no way that I should be the one apologizing to you, right? There's no way that you think I should be doing this because you're not doing this over here. And then you get into separate rooms and you're like, could I get to Asia? Could I get a plane to Asia right now? Like, could I possibly get any farther away from this person? And when you're in that moment, you know what I'm talking about. I can see them. Okay, don't sit here. Oh, don't judge me. All right. I'm sitting in the room. I can see it. And you know that feeling. What's the last thing on earth you want to do right then? Pray. You're not going to pray to God in that moment. And I often wonder about that in my life. I go, wait, I'm mad at my wife. Why is God catching strays right now? Because I know once I start asking for his opinion, I won't like it. He's going to be pointing at things in my life. He's going to be demanding things of me. When if I can hold up in this fortress of my own opinion and my own feelings and my own whatever, I can make everything be about the other person. And so not only am I divided from my wife, I'm divided from my God. And Jesus is going, no, I'm going to take all of it. But when we get past that, and when we step in, and we say, okay, God, I get it. I get it. You're gonna require from me what the rest of the world's not going to require of me. And I'll walk into it. I'll do it. What you'll find is marriages changed. Your thoughts and your opinions and your anger changed. You'll find him going in different nooks and crannies of your heart and changing what operates there. And your desires will change and your feelings will change. And he has done it for the last 2,000 years. And his love and his grace has been so pervasive that it's gone through cultures, and it's gone through nations, it has gone through continents, and it has lit people up everywhere it's gone. And when people do step in, and they don't just sit there on the side of the pool going, well, he's kind of an interesting guy. Okay, I'm going to check it out forever, and I'm never going to take it a step in. I'm never going to decide to follow him. I'm never going to decide to let him be the Lord of my life. When people finally step in, what people all throughout history and all around the world have found out, that yes, that love that's amazing, and that divine, it demands everything I've got. And actually, my life is better when I do give my soul, my life, and my all. Jesus is here. The great thing about the resurrection is this: it means Jesus is here. He's not dead. He's not left us alone. He's here. And he's looking at all of us. He's looking at the exiles. He's looking at those who have been separated from the communities that mean the most to us. He's saying, hey, I'm here to bring it all back in. And you can come back into the people of God today. But what it means is we cannot reject him. We have to follow the example of Mary, not the indignant people who were high and mighty and had all these other things to do. That we need to come to him and say, God, I accept it. I accept you. And I don't care what feeling I get when you point it out at me. I don't care what anger rises up inside me when it gets pointed out. I want you. I want to give you my soul, my life, and my all. And I want you to hear me when I say this. This church exists to help people figure out that step and the life after. I hope that you will not reject Jesus. And you'll say, Jesus, you have my all.